From Amerivet Securities, a service-disabled, veteran-owned broker-dealer in New York City, we bring you Compass Check, a podcast created by veterans for veterans. The military uses a compass to navigate air, land, and sea. Now, Compass Check is here to help you navigate your transition into the corporate workforce. Our goal is to reach military veterans and members of the veteran community, empower and connect them with a multitude of resources that will ultimately set them up for success after leaving the military. I'm your host, Army veteran James Fitzgerald. Let's get moving. Warrior Scholar Project is an organization that introduces enlisted service members and veterans to the rigors and opportunities of higher education. In partnership with top colleges and universities, Warrior Scholar Project provides intensive college preparatory academic boot camps on partner campus locations. The academic boot camps are offered in 3 disciplines: humanities, STEM, and business and entrepreneurship. Each boot camp provides faculty lectures, writing workshops, research projects, and one-on-one tutoring, culminating with each participant acquiring the skills to succeed in higher education and navigate the cultural shift from military service to college. Throughout the course, participants are mentored by other student veterans who have successfully transitioned from military service to college. In addition, Warrior Scholar Project also offers workshops tailored to address the unique needs of veterans enrolled in community colleges and targeted programming for marginalized veterans, such as the Women Veterans Empowerment Dialogues. Warrior Scholar Project covers the cost of the entire program for all students and currently is being hosted on over 15 colleges and universities across the country. Today's episode features Warrior Scholar Project CEO Ryan Pavel. Here's our conversation. It's time to kick the tires and light the fires back in the classroom. It's an exciting day to have Ryan Pavel here with me from Warrior Scholar Project on this leg of our journey, transitioning out of the military and into the corporate workforce. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So Warrior Scholar Project is a very unique organization that presents a variety of programming specifically for enlisted veterans. I'd like for you, before we get into that unique programming, just give us a little bit of the background, the history, what made Warrior Scholar Project come into existence.
Sure. Yeah. So one of the things that I really like about WSP is it's this very organic start, right? So it's a group of people that are coming together, group of college students at Yale, some civilians, some military, and they're coming together and they're saying, hey, right, all right, what does it take for a military veteran who's coming off of active duty service to succeed at a rigorous school like Yale, right, as part of the Eli Whitney program? And what they realized is that the things that were working for some folks could be scaled up, right? So this idea of there is a way to be a successful student, and a lot of veterans respond really well if you show them how to be able to be successful as a student, right? They have sort of the core experience and the core talents to be able to succeed, but they need a little bit of guidance. And so a few students, Jesse Rising, Nick Rugoff, and Chris Howell, came together, supported by some other really important people, Chris's brother, David, and a few other people that helped get the program off the ground, a bunch of other students at Yale. And they brought together 9 veterans in 2012, and they put them into a room for a week, and they ran a humanities curriculum that was really similar to some of the courses on the humanities that were happening at Yale. So they said, hey, this works for students at Yale. What if we just ran a bunch of active duty veterans and recently separated veterans through this program and see how they respond? And they tapped into this model that was when you have this intensive mentorship, right, and this instructor to student ratio that's wildly in favor of the students, that people can succeed. And then, long story short, over the course of the past 11 years, we've scaled pretty aggressively. About 2,000 people have gone through the program. 400 are going to go through this summer. We have 24 academic boot camps this summer. So, and that's only one of the various types of programs that we offer. That's it in a nutshell.
I mean, you just mentioned that that's just one of the multiple programs that you offer. So now that we've gotten that background and that context, tell us about these programs. What do they entail? Where are they being offered? and how can we get these veterans that are transitioning out connected to it?
Yeah. Right. So a few different important questions there. So one is in terms of the types of programs. So for many years within WSP, what we did was we took the academic bootcamp model that worked for humanities and we scaled it, right? Students would go through that and they would say, okay, this is great, but I'm interested in STEM, right? And so we had Marla Jiha, who was an early supporter, and Jeremy Bradford, a couple folks from Yale, who did a lab, right, for the humanities students. And students responded really well to it and said, okay, I'm interested in STEM. The next year, they came together, brought in some additional support, and they made a STEM program happen. So then it was go through a week of humanities and a week of STEM. And then a few years later, I think, relevant to the corporate transition side into what Amerivet Securities is doing, but launched a business and entrepreneurship program, initially in partnership with USC. And now we're going to be on 4 campuses. Notre Dame is actually happening as we speak. USC, Yale, and Syracuse, we're all going to be running business and entrepreneurship programs this year. So part of it has been an expansion of that academic bootcamp model, these modular versions of 1 week of very intensive programs run by veterans that are in these 3 different content areas. And we found that just about every transitioning veteran finds themselves in one of those 3, right? One of those 3 areas of discipline. Now, a lot of folks don't necessarily know what they want to study. And we say, okay, start with the humanities, right? Everybody has to go through the gen eds. And then let's help you figure out if you want to specialize in some other sort of content. The other types of programs we offer is we started doing in 2018 these one-day workshops. These were really heavily, we gear these heavily towards community college students because we want to use this as an intervention model, right? So many veterans get out of the service and they're confident enough to start at community college, but then they say, this isn't really for me, right? It is, right? If you want to succeed in higher education, you can do it if you're committed to this path. So we use this as a one-day version of our programming to work with various community college students and students throughout the country to equip them with skills that will make them better students the next day in the classroom. And then we say, if this was useful, imagine what an intensive week or 2 or 3 of this would look like. So come see our full programs. 2 other quick things. One is on these women veteran empowerment dialogues, right? Trying to identify populations that some folks on our staff and some of our alumni came together and said, hey, we should build a dialogue series, right? A monthly dialogue series when we're bringing together women veteran leaders. And we're putting them in contact with our students, right, with our prospective students, and talking about issues that are unique to that population. And that's been really successful. We've been doing that for about 2 years. And then, James, you can speak to this a little bit too, but on the alumni side, right, we're scaling our alumni services because it's not a one-off program. You go through the boot camp, and now we have graduate school support. We're building partnerships with corporate leaders and, all these various things to be able to help our students engage as civic leaders after going through WSP.
Everything that you were describing was preaching to the choir, because I was a part of the 2015 University of Chicago Humanities course. It was back in 2015, and I was so new to the civilian veteran sector. Warrior Scholar Project really did rescue me from an educational black hole that I was in. I was at a community college, but I just felt like I was rudderless, trying to get my feet underneath me and find out what resources are available to me, but also to figure out what methods work for me. How do I study? How do I read? How do I consume information? Where do I need to be to study? All those things were components that I really did not take into account until I had that mentorship on that one-on-one, maybe me in a small group, to identify some of the obstacles in my life, in my environment, that maybe I was presenting and wasn't even conscious of them. So it definitely was a educational situational awareness shock to the mind. And it was done in a way that you had a group of veterans to support, to go through this experience with you, and you come out with this shared experience going back to your individual homes and communities. And that's where the magic happened, is not only do you go back and achieve your own academic success, but you have other resources, human capital, to reach out to. Can you read this paper? Hey, I'm scratching my head about some scholarship information.
Right.
It was that community building after the fact that was so influential and important, but it wasn't even advertised. And I think that was the beauty of it, beyond just it being specifically focused on the enlisted component, which the educational disparities inside of active duty service are extremely high when you're looking at their officer corps components. There
Yeah.
isn't that continued education in the way that transitions out of the service. So I want to focus on the eligibility, some of the places that, have applications that are currently taking on summer cohorts, fall cohorts. Let us know what we can find on your website, warrior-scholar.org, in order to get connected.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, your summary there, to go back to that, is, one of the things that I've started doing. A bit about my background for this. I got involved with WSP in 2013 when it was at Yale only, and they were looking to expand it. And I found out about it through one of my friends from my old unit who was helping support it as a volunteer at Yale. I flew out and saw it in 2013. I was blown away. Just at the level of discourse that this group of, crusty veterans and active duty service members were having. I jumped into a seminar with the late Charles Hill, this legendary professor, and they were just going toe to toe with them. And I was thinking, my God, right? This thing is special. And so then I worked with a group to bring it to University of Michigan in 2014. And that was my part-time engagement with WSP for years, right? For about 5 years was going back and running that program and recruiting students for it and recruiting faculty and being able to run it and teach analytical reading. So very much like this hands-on experience. And then I stepped into the COO role in 2018 and CEO role in 2019. And one of the things that I like about it a lot is, James, your experience is something that was true in the initial cohort, the first cohort I saw, which was the second year operated at Yale in 2013. And it's true in the cohorts that are happening in 2022, right? That level of authentic, intensive mentorship works. It really works. And one of the practices I've started doing is anytime that I'm talking to a donor, I'll bring along an alum because of exactly what you just said. I can talk about WSP till I'm blue in the face, and I do. But hearing from your experience of, okay, I was a community college student. I was a little bit, listless, and I knew I wanted to pursue education, but, I didn't quite know exactly how to do it. A 1 week, right? Intensive. Again, it's about 80 hours of work per week. So when we say intensive, we mean it. That's why we call it an academic boot camp. But it really builds that confidence because students come out of it and saying, oh, I can do this. I actually have the tools to succeed, right? I don't need to self-select out of pursuing a great education. It's incredibly powerful. So to answer your actual question, warrior-scholar.org. There's a ton of resources on there that will describe these various programs that I'm talking about. Look, the bottom line is every enlisted service member and veteran who does not yet have a bachelor's degree should apply to Warrior Scholar Project, period.
Agreed.
Right? Full stop. And that is that's part of our challenge, right? Is thinking about we need to continue to scale our academic boot camps. We were beyond fortunate to receive a really generous gift from Mackenzie Scott a couple months ago, which is helping us accelerate our plans to scale other types of programs, other modalities to reach more of the hundreds of thousands of veterans that are transitioning each year, right? No matter how many seats we grow, there's always going to be a limiting factor if we're expanding by cohorts of 15. And also, James, you had to take some sort of initiative to say, hey, I'm confident enough to apply to Warrior Scholar Project at U Chicago. A lot of students see U Chicago in that, even though it's not applying to U Chicago, it's WSP at U Chicago, and they self-select out. They say, no, I don't have what it takes. So we need to be able to have different modalities that are really easy for people to be able to access so that they can start to get that mentality. So the folks that aren't even on your level when you initially applied to WSP, and there are tens of thousands each year, right, of folks that are transitioning that fall into that category. And that's pretty consistent no matter where we are in terms of operations abroad, right? Every year it's between 180 to 220,000 service members that are leaving the service, and over half of them are starting higher education. So there's an enormous group of people that need to be served.
Agreed. One thing that was interesting about my specific cohort, and I'm not going to name them by name, but it was a father-daughter connection. Like it was a retired veteran that had just transitioned out after 20 plus years of service, that was going back to school, and his daughter that was also a veteran that just transitioned out, not as long, and she's going into college as well. And it was just it was such a perfect representation of the wide array of veterans and the different places that we have to meet them
Right.
and provide their needs and
Right.
meet these expectations that they have once they get out. It's like, oh, I'm going to do this. We're going to help you meet that expectation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so
I
like
mean,
that
it's
was the, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's a brilliant and important point, right? Because the other reason that people self-select out is because they say, "Well, I don't have the academic chops, right? I mean, I like why I won't be able to succeed here." And there is not a placement test that you go through, whether it's humanities,
Yeah.
business, or STEM, right? It's not anything like that. We have people that are already about to complete their degrees that go through the program
Yep.
that get derive a ton of value, and we have people that haven't been in a classroom since high school, right? That derive value, and the way that we overcome that is by having, again, I referred to it as this sort of absurdly favorable instructor to student ratio, right? So we go through and we have the resources on the campus to be able to say, okay, you need this type of mentorship. This is the level that you're at. After we can figure out where people are after the first couple of days, we're going to get you from A to B, right? We're going to help you cross that delta no matter what people's experience is. So we have these really diverse cohorts, right? Across branches of service,
Mhm.
across genders, across stage of transition. And the programs are meant to be able to meet all of them where they're at. And it works, right? I've yet to meet an enlisted veteran that couldn't succeed in our programs and indeed in higher education. And I've been doing student veteran support for 12 years since I got out of the Marine Corps.
I'm not going to tell people many of the secrets behind the course because that's like the secret sauce in the Big Mac. Like I don't want to ruin that, but like just something that you'll definitely resonate with, as will some of the other alumni as they tune in. I still have my Tocqueville book,
Yeah,
Democracy, on my bookshelf.
that's
It
right.
is,
Right here.
yeah, it is a badge of honor for me to be able to know that I've consumed this
Yeah.
beast of a book
Yeah.
and done it in a way that gives me satisfaction
Yes.
in myself and gives me an up armored view of my capabilities.
Yeah.
And then we send these individuals back out into the world, and like that's leading me into that alumni conversation.
Right.
And I think yet again that bread and butter, not only to help others understand the true
Right.
power of this organization, but the alumni community are also the individuals that are on the ground that are the closest to these veterans and individuals that we're trying to connect with.
Right.
So we're going to move into a segment talking about the alumni community, including
Sure.
myself and you. But it's going to be more focused on how they stay connected after they leave the 1 or 2 week program, whichever one they may choose, and go back into their communities. How are they staying in connection
Yeah.
afterwards?
Yeah. Yeah, so I have to chuckle about Tocqueville because your story there, I hear that all the time, right? And I think that it is sort of a way for people to remind themselves of what that experience was like, right? There's something symbolic about this incredibly dense book. When I used to lead welcome addresses when I was at the Michigan program. Now that's the fellows that have the pleasure of doing that and meeting the students. But I stole this joke from Chris Howell. Whenever he would do a group of students, that was one of the co-founders, and I watched him kick off many courses. Students would walk into the classroom. They would have Tocqueville right here. They would have a couple other books, right? They Say, I Say, How to Be a Straight A Student, How Democratic is the American Constitution, right? A few books. And he would deadpan. He'd say, all right, welcome to Warrior Scholar Project. By the end of this week, you will have read every page of every book in front of you. And he would just let that hang, right? And they say, no, I'm just kidding, right? And the relief is just palpable from people afterwards. Because that's actually, but I think that joke works for a few reasons, because the idea isn't that you need to read the entire book, right? It's how to be a really intentional student, looking at the syllabus. What is the instructor asking me to read? What's the connection to the other programs here? What's the connection to the other readings? What's my writing assignment? The more intentional you are, the more time that you save, right? So it's really building that plan of attack before you just brute force and you say, okay, the teacher wants me to start on page 87. I guess I'll open to page 87. No, right? Do the work beforehand so that every page that you're reading is really tying into something. That's part of the secret for why this thing works. So I love that you mentioned Tocqueville. On the alumni side, right? So we were really fortunate in 2019 to get our first our first grant from the Clark Foundation, which was a capacity building grant. and we're still have an ongoing relationship with them. And one of the things that they helped us do is expand our capacity to serve alumni. Because as I mentioned, the idea here is that WSP is not a one-off experience, right? That informally for years, people would go through the course, they would have these really tight bonding experiences with their fellows, with faculty members from the institution. I guess I didn't mention that, but when you talked about going through the U Chicago program, WSP programs are taught in partnership with that host institution. So faculty members from U Chicago are coming in to talk about democracy, about the Constitution, about Alexis de Tocqueville. And then our alumni fellows, right, who are alum of the program, are coming back, who went through the program a couple of years ago. They're now currently achieving success in undergrad or in graduate school. And they're saying, hey, I was in your shoes a couple of years ago. Here's how I really was able to navigate this process. So it's a combination. And that's part of why this works, again, that confidence building. So we do not want it to be this one-off experience. And so informally, a lot of those fellows will stay in close contact with their students afterwards. And so one of the things that we've grown, right, James, you're a part of this now, as are many others, is something as simple as like an alumni Slack workspace, right? So what we're doing this summer for the first time is as soon as a student is a week before they start their course, they're added into this workspace, right? So even before they're technically alum, we want them to be infused into this community, to be able to say, hey, right, just this morning, right, somebody posted in there and said, all right, I'm going to the UPenn cohort next week. I'm really excited. Here's my plan. And then 4 people respond immediately and say, okay, awesome, right, here, so I can help. You're interested in studying this thing, right? That's what it's all about, right, is these organic connections that people know that they have that community. Community is the core thing that makes people succeed in transition. That is the defining thing that makes people succeed more than any other specific skill. If you have a community that you can utilize, you don't have to be an extrovert. You don't have to be going to every networking event imaginable. But if you have a community that you can ask those trusted questions to and receive authentic advice, that really matters. So reinforcing that, the alumni conference in Chicago in August is a really good example of doing that on the ground, right? So this is an offer to alumni across all 11 years of the program. We're anticipating about 150 at this time, but we'll see if we could always scale that up. This is the first time that we're bringing everybody together, and it's under this theme of lifelong learning. So part of it is reconnecting with each other, but another really important part of it is having these breakout sessions for folks that are interested in various types of graduate schools, right? So what does that look like for you to be able to carry that torch into graduate school? James, I'd love to have you there and others about talking about the transition into the corporate world, right? What types of steps can people take to concretely make those connections to be able to get there? It's really exciting because, again, it's reinforcing that idea of nobody should be creating this out of whole cloth, right? We have hundreds of thousands of people that have made these transitions, so let's learn from each other to figure out what that looks like. I mentioned graduate school a couple times, but that is the other area that's going to continue to grow for us, right? We started a pilot with that last year, but we have so many of our students that say, okay, this was great for undergrad. How can I use this to be able to go to law school, to med school, to pursue a PhD program? And we need enlisted veterans in all of those programs. So that's another big area for us now.
It's going to be exciting for me to join you at the conference. It's at U Chicago. So for me, it is a full circle experience of knowing my first experience. This may be said to my detriment. I remember how Warrior Scholar Project found me. I had failed every single class my initial semester. And it was something that I didn't understand even when I landed in O'Hare Airport trying to figure out, okay, what is this program going to really teach me to help me not fail all my classes? It wasn't teaching me secrets or anything like that. It was teaching me just basic steps that I can take to plan, to be responsible with my time, to manage my it's like all these things were the basics that other people learned from their mentors, from their guidance counselors, from teachers. Why not give that to the enlisted veteran once they transition out? Because that's what made us successful in. So it was just, it's going to be a full circle experience for me when I join you all. And I would be delighted to, continue conversations like this, to provide the information that some of us didn't get leaving the Marines, such as yourself, or leaving the Army and trying to transition and figure out how to do that. I came from the infantry. We weren't being told, hey, the corporate America world is looking for combat infantrymen. Find us. It was told, hey, we don't understand what your experiences are, and we weren't being taught as we're transitioning now a good way to translate them. So this is helping to educate a large swath of our populace in a way that hasn't been provided in quite some time. And to steal a quote, education is the best defense to freedom and liberty than
Mm.
any standing army ever will be. So to up armor these enlisted veterans that have already put so much on the line for this country and providing them the ability to achieve so much more success educationally, I think that is the gift that we can
I'm
give.
sorry, I'm managing, but you fired me up with what you're talking about there. So I have to say, I mean, like, I think that because I think that that's it, right? So sometimes people ask us, right, why are we only focusing on the enlisted population? Now, one is purely definitional in the sense that there's a gap where most enlisted do not yet have their undergraduate degree, right? So that's commissioned officers by definition have to have a degree prior to commissioning. So that's sort of an easy one, but there is a deeper reason here, which is if you are transitioning out as right, I was an enlisted Marine 2005 to 2010, was an Arabic translator. When I got out, the transition assistance program was not helpful, right? Just not helpful at all. For some people, it's helpful. It's gotten better, right? But for me, it was not. And one of the reasons in particular, beyond just specific discrete skills, is in terms of aspiration setting, right? Okay, you're getting out after an enlistment. What can you do, right? There was virtually nothing for me there in terms of aspirationally helping me build that path to higher education or what I should be setting my sights on. And I got out in 2010, which was a year after the Post 9/11 GI Bill went into effect. So there were enormous opportunities for it. And so much of it is that mentality shift where we want enlisted veterans thinking concretely about, okay, I should be shooting for corporate America. I should be shooting for civic leadership. I should be shooting for nonprofit leadership, right? Set your sights really high and then work backwards to build out the plan for what education, what networks do I need to be able to do there? But until you get people to be thinking bigger about what they can accomplish, and I think that this is a problem, right? For many, in particular, junior enlisted, right? Folks do 1 or 2 enlistments, think they missed the boat on higher education. Okay, all these things. You have to be able to set those aspirations high. And that's a big part of what we do. One other thing, in my law school class, I was one of only 2 or 3 enlisted veterans. The rest were of the veteran population. The others were commissioned officers. It's fantastic that the commissioned officers are there, but we should have just as many enlisted veterans that are shooting for that and that are equipped and that are admitted to those law schools.
I agree. And to Warrior Scholar projects, you know, like Brilliant, you're doing many of these courses on college campuses or university, campuses that feel out of reach for many of us enlisted veterans. I remember hearing about Warrior Scholar Project and the campuses that you were already on, and it was just astounding to Yale and Harvard, all these places that I was like, well, they'll never let me in.
Right.
I don't know if they'll even let me on the campus, let alone be a student. It was those experiences being there that demystify the environment, that lets you know that not only are other humans going here, but they're just like you, they're just like me, and I can do this as long as I give myself the opportunity. I think
Yep.
Warrior Scholar Project is just as much about helping with the academic part as helping with the confidence part about, yes, I can do this. This is
Absolutely.
an institution that's tangible. I'm here. I'm meeting with recruiting and admissions administrators.
Yep.
They like me. Wow,
Right.
I can do this.
Right.
And it doesn't matter where I was coming from a community college, that transfer status of, oh, I can only get the basic of transfer schools. Like, no,
Yep.
you can do so much more. Give
Yep.
yourself the opportunity to spread your wings and fly.
100%.
That's that's going to lead me to my last part, and I promise it will be just as corny as that. But before I do, I want to give you an opportunity if there's any additional contact information you'd like to provide for veterans and service members transitioning out that like to become a part of the upcoming cohorts, or some alumni that are eager to reconnect with Warrior Scholar Project and tap into some of those topics that you had mentioned earlier.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely right. So just to remind folks again, warrior-scholar.org. please visit that website. Let us know if you have feedback on it too. We rebuilt it about 6 months ago, and it's a shifting landscape trying to build a dynamic website that routes people into the right direction. So, but there is the application is still open. Having said that, our seats, we don't have too many seats left for the summer. So folks may have maybe later in the summer for the programs they're looking at. But if you are an enlisted service member or a veteran, or if you know one that either doesn't have a bachelor's degree or got a bachelor's degree that isn't doing them any good, let us know, right? Apply. It's a really simple interest form. And then a member of our outreach team will be in contact within about 72 hours to talk about the options. And even if WSP isn't even the best fit, right, for you, which it will, for vast majority of people it is, but even if it isn't, right, we'll work with you to figure out what types of resources can we provide you. My contact info as well, Pavel, RPAVEL at warrior-scholar.org. Folks I love communicating with the community, and in particular, the veterans and service members themselves. Please feel free to contact me. You mentioned the alumni. I mean, there's an endless number of success stories we can talk about. And that's one of the things we have listed on our website too, right? If you're curious about, what is it? Is James's experience unique? No, right? You have your unique way in which you navigated through things, but so many people go through the program and see this and cite this as the pivot point for them to be able to set their aspirations high. We were talking briefly before about Andrew Nguyen, who's at Yale, kicking ass there after going through the program in 2018. Yeah. Jasmine, who went through a few years ago, who served as a fellow for us for a couple of years and is now doing her master's in nursing at Duke. Jeremiah Tallis, we were talking about, right, representing the Native population as well, which is an area that we're consistently trying to think about. How do we conduct additional outreach? There's a huge percentage of veterans in the Native American and Indigenous population, and so we're trying to be able to think about how do we build programming. I talked about different modalities, right? What types of modalities do we need to be able to increase the representation and the outreach there? There are 1,001 success stories. So many of those are listed on the website, and I encourage folks to go there and check them out.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to reverse my normal double time segment that I would typically put towards the guests, and I'm going to focus it to our viewing and listening audience for you to go and check out these individuals, these veterans that are breaking barriers, that are kicking ass, that are taking names, that are providing the example for others, not just to follow, but it's redefining what people envision in their minds when veteran comes up, which is what should be happening. So Andrew, Jasmine, Jeremiah, Jesse Needs, he was in my U Chicago class in 2015. He's, two-time fellow, heavyweight champion. It's always great to see individuals that you're able to encounter that inspire you, just during that interaction, but you see them continuously excelling, defining success for themselves, but inspiring others in a meaningful way to do more for themselves and more for their community. With that, I'm going to let you get back to your responsibilities to your community. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you today, to reminisce about all the fantastic experiences I had with Warrior Scholar Project, and also hear about all the new things that you all have coming up, but going on for the veteran community to tap into.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. And again, I think that, I will, given the opportunity, to talk about WSP until I'm blue in the face, but nothing compares to your experience of how you found it and how you went through it. I, have tremendous respect for you being able to continue to be so intentional about your transition and work in this podcast and everything that AmeriVet Securities is doing to be able to support and recruit this population. That speaks volumes. So I'm happy to be able to contribute something to this, and I look forward to talking to more members of our community.
Let this man speak. Oh my goodness. I hate to cut you off. Flattery will get you everywhere with me. But currently right now, it's gotten us to the end of our conversation today. Thank you again, Ryan. I will be in touch because we have so many events coming down the pipeline, and I cannot wait to be a part. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye, and thank you all in our viewing and listening audience for joining us today. See you later. Thank you for listening to Compass Check with AmeriVet Securities. I've been your host, James Fitzgerald. See you next time.